We're going to end this chapter by considering in a bit more detail how are these gases actually transported. We've considered how they diffuse into the blood or out of the blood depending on the driving forces involved, but how are they actually transported when they are in the blood? Oxygen transport happens primarily through the action of binding to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a molecule that is present in red blood cells. There's a lot of it present in red blood cells. Each hemoglobin molecule has 4 irons. You can just make them out here in this picture. And each hemoglobin molecule can carry 4 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so each of these can carry 4 oxygen molecules, and then there are 280 million, about 280 million of these per red blood cell. So in total, one red blood cell can carry more than 1 billion oxygen molecules. That's a lot of oxygen molecules. In sickle cell disease, what happens in sickle cell disease is there's a single amino acid substitution, and it causes this this molecule to tend to it's almost like it polymerizes. It tends to fold into a chain-like form, and this alters the shape of the entire red blood cell when it happens to a high enough degree. So that can be very serious. That tends to happen, that misfolding tends to happen at low oxygen levels. That's when this altering of shape tends to happen. It's almost like a whole bunch of fibers end up forming in the red blood cell. So instead of the red blood cell being the round shape, instead it ends up having a sickle shape. It's almost kind of like a C-shaped. And that can alter the ability of red blood cells to flow through blood vessels, for one thing. Alters the ability of oxygen to be delivered to the tissues. So, ordinarily, if oxygen is being carried by a normal, healthy blood cell, a red blood cell, ordinarily what would facilitate that red blood cell to release the oxygen is a couple of key things, 2 key things really. Decreases in pH, and or increases in temperature. Either one will drive the red blood cell to give up its oxygen. So this is interesting because you can think about what happens when you're exercising. Your muscles generate heat, and products of metabolism sometimes lower the pH as well. So this tends to drive red blood cells to give up their oxygen where they are most needed, at metabolically active sites in the body. Carbon dioxide, if we look at carbon dioxide, how is it transported in the blood? Carbon dioxide is carried in 3 different forms in the blood. About 10% is just dissolved in the plasma. It's a little bit more soluble than oxygen, so a little bit more can just dissolve into the plasma and be transported freely in that way. About 20% of it attaches to hemoglobin. Interesting. So oxygen is transported attached to hemoglobin. Turns out carbon dioxide can do that as well. Only about 20% of the carbon dioxide transports this way though. The majority is transported as bicarbonate ions, and this is what our lab focused in on in some detail. So most of the transport happens in this form in the blood. And in order for this to be formed, this requires an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase takes these 2 molecules, it takes carbon dioxide and water. If these are in the same vicinity with each other, carbonic anhydrase can cause these to react together to form carbonic acid. Okay, so this is taking place over in the picture. This is inside of a red blood cell. Carbonic acid is being formed. Once that is formed, it can dissociate. It's easy for it to dissociate. The same enzyme is involved in this process. Carbonic anhydrase can facilitate this reaction to happen. So carbonic acid splits into a proton and the bicarbonate ion. The bicarbonate ion, this is something that can diffuse out into the plasma. So right over here, bicarbonate ion diffuses outwards. However, this proton that was formed, it's not able to diffuse outwards, not very easily. So that means that the pH inside of this cell is starting to lower. It's becoming more acidic. And what happens is a chloride ion tends to rush in to sort of counteract that. So we've got bicarbonate diffusing outwards and chloride diffusing inwards. It's attracted to where this proton is at. This is called the chloride shift. The chloride shift happens, and it's just the reverse of it takes place when carbon dioxide is ready to be expelled from the body. So when we're ready to breathe carbon dioxide outwards, it's just the reverse reaction of the chloride shift. So that's it as far as what we'll be covering with chapter 16. I hope that you can literally right now take a deep breath. And as you do that, I would like for you to think about what just happened with gas exchange. Which direction did carbon dioxide just go? Which direction did oxygen just go in your alveoli? What did that do to the concentration of those gases in your blood? Let's see here, what else? What happened to the pH of your blood as a result? How was that pH change detected? In what region of the brain was able to detect that change in pH? And let's see here, what else? What did the brain do as a result? What did the brain activate? What muscles did it activate? And in turn, what's happened to the rate of your breathing? Did your breathing rate increase or decrease? These are all things that should start to be fitting together. We're starting to involve multiple organ systems, and it's good just to once in a while stop and sort of practice thinking through these things. So now's the time to do that, and we'll end this chapter on that note.